Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a best of 5 series of top level StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is a Terran versus Zerg, where in game number 1 we find ourselves on Whispers of Gold. Now spawning right here in the bottom left hand corner. Wait, is it the bottom left hand corner? It's the top left hand corner-ish. This is the map that has these interesting spawn locations. Playing with the blue Terran pieces. We have the world champion of StarCraft 2. And he goes by the name of Clem. His opponent down, well, I guess on the opposite side of the map, playing with the red Zerg pieces. We're looking at none other than Solar's main hatchery. So, this is played on the public test realm with the updated version of the multiplayer balance patch. This is the most recent iteration of it. And I guess we'll get to have a look at what top level Terran versus Zerg looks like. One of the most notable changes for this matchup, the one that the community has been begging for, well, pretty much years at this point, is of course the nerf to the Ghost. Now, I don't really know exactly how impactful it's going to be. The Ghost is now a 3 supply unit rather than 2. I feel like it's probably one of the smallest changes you could have made to the unit that will still at least satisfy the community a little bit. But it is of course nice to see a little bit of an adjustment to one of the most oppressive units in the game. That being said, Clem is certainly still going to make them if the game gets to that point. But it will be a little bit more difficult for him to make a very large army. Now, you may have already noticed when I zoomed over Solar's base, he's joined a new team. And I find this curious. So, in case you're a little out of the loop, we don't have a professional gaming scene announced yet for 2025. So, obviously, we crowned the world champion, it's Clem, back in August. And after that, the pro scene has sort of ended. At the very least, we haven't had an announced renewal just yet. That being said, Solar just joined Team Falcons. They're a very large esports organization that did extremely well during the Esports World Cup. And I've got a feeling that they wouldn't be picking anybody up right now if it wasn't for the fact that they probably know a little bit more, right? So it's an esports organization from Saudi Arabia. The EWC is Saudi Arabian as well. It's not quite a confirmation, but it's certainly a big step in the right direction in my mind. It would be really nice to have another announcement for hopefully a couple of years. That would be nice. That would be my dream, man. In my mind, maybe this is copium, maybe it's hopium. It depends. Anyways, in my mind, the reason why it's all taken a very long time is because they're trying to work out a multi-year deal with both Blizzard and then Microsoft and then the Esports World Cup. And then obviously we have ESL in there too. It just takes a long time, right? 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 It's gotta be it. That's gotta be it. Anyways, at the very least, there's still a ton of online tournaments being played and I get to cast many of those replays, but it would be really nice to have a pro scene announced for 2025 and maybe beyond. I mean, honestly, I'd be very surprised if we don't get anything, right? I mean, especially with the EWC this year, so that was a $1 million prize pool. Clem got the lion's share of that, which is nice for him. He got 400,000 first place prize and then a casual 50 grand bonus as well, because he had like the best performance throughout the event. It wasn't necessarily going to be the champion of the tournament, but it turned out that, yeah, Clem was pretty much unbeatable that week. Anyways, it'll be crazy if, like, the biggest tournament of all time is the one that ends. Nah, that doesn't make any sense. Nah, I don't think that makes any sense. Right? Right? Okay, I'll shut up about it. We have a triple CC opener right here for Clem. Terran build orders haven't really changed. Mostly because, well, you can still play Hellion Banshee. None of these units have really been adjusted all too much, although, yeah, you still have to be careful. One thing, of course, to note for Zerg is that the Queen is 25 minerals more expensive, and with that unit being more expensive, it also means that it's a little bit more difficult to make a whole load of them at the correct time. You can see here that Solar decided to cut some corners, maybe delay the link speed ever so slightly. It means that he will be able to clean this up eventually. He only lost a handful of units here, so it's really not the end of the world. But things are delicate. I think that's a good way to put it. Things are relatively delicate here. You can see that everything is on a razor's edge. And while Solar defends this with minimal losses, I can imagine that it's still extremely hectic. Spore Crawler coming up. Spore Crawlers, of course, now deal a little bit more damage. And that is indeed where this Banshee is going to come in. There is a Spore Crawler in the main base, but nothing over at the third base location. Cloaking Field is actually pretty late. Clem purposely delaying that one for a little while. Ooh, we're playing mech. Okay. So there's a lot of changes to Terran Mech as well. The most obvious one, I guess, would be changes to, like, for example, the Thor. The Thor is now a lot better against mutants. It deals a lot more splash damage with its splash damage missiles, but it has less range. But I would say the biggest change is the complete reversal of the Cyclone. So, over the last couple of years, the Cyclone has gotten about a dozen changes. The unit has been reworked twice. We are now not to the previous rework of the unit, but to the rework before that. We have a complete reversal where the unit once used to be. This is the version of the Cyclone that still requires a tech lab to be produced, which changes the whole dynamic of everything. Yep, there we go. We are apparently going to be going for the good old upgrade there. I haven't seen the old school Cyclone in a long while. Obviously, we have the Hurricane Thrusters ability right now too here for Clem, who wants to be playing full battle mech. It looks like Clem is not going to be playing the Marines and the Marauders like we have seen him do over the last couple of years. Instead, he's going to be playing what seems to be Hellion, Banshee, and then into Cyclones, which is really cool. Actually, I got it wrong. This is Hyperflight Rotors. Hurricane Thrusters is the ability that I guess is no longer around right now, because that used to be the Cyclone speed improvement. I failed caster school, guys. I dropped out of caster school. I don't even know all of the upgrades. Ay, ay, ay. Hellions do manage to create a lot of drama once more, but you can tell that it's not really dealing a lot of damage. Like, yes, this has slowed things down. The drones obviously needed to run, but considering the amount of sacrifices we have seen here from Clem, I don't really know if he's gotten his value. Yeah, I guess it's alright, but it's certainly nothing to write home about. 2 additional factories coming up. Dude, I haven't seen... Honestly, Clem never plays mech, right? Like, Clem in general is not a mech player. He does it maybe every once in a while when he's feeling extremely confident. I can imagine you feel pretty good if you're Clem, right? But are you gonna feel overly confident against Solar? Solar is a world-class Zerg. I don't think that's gonna be the case. I think he's really just experimenting. Roaches are gonna get their Glio Reconstitution upgrade. That one I do know the name of. That's the Roach Speed improvement. Double armory in the back of the main base. Infernal Pre-Igniter. There it is. Look, one day, you might be a finalist on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire television show, okay? And the final question will be, what was the first name of the speed upgrade in patch 5.0. whatever it is in StarCraft 2 for the Cyclone speed improvement? And you will be able to call it not Hurricane Threats, but Hurricane Thrusters. And it'll be the most niche little bit of knowledge. And you'll be glad you've watched this. Totally. Totally. And you know what? I don't even need to share. No, it's okay. You can have it. That's a lot of Banshees. Not a lot of anti-air here for the Zerg. Generally speaking, Banshee openers have 2 Banshees at most. Yeah, that's a really lucky attempt right there for Solar, but that's never going to happen against Clem. Clem is too fast. He's too handsome. He's too good. He's certainly not going to get his Banshees bottled down. I mean, I would be very impressed if that happens, but... This is an attack that is never going to work out unless the Queens get a hurry up. I mean, this is still only a handful of Queens. There is one Overseer available. I think Solar is losing a little bit too much. Keep in mind that Clem at this point has 80 workers. This is not him going for an all-in. This is him basically playing like the Marine Marauder style of mech, right? This is not Siege Tanks. This is not Thors. This is the super mobile army of Terran instead. And it's gonna give him a ton of stuff to be roaming around the map with, and in the meantime, honestly, Clem right now is the Zerg player in this matchup. He's the one with the bigger economy, he's the one that can swarm the map with war units, and he just pushed back that attack there from the Zerg player easy peasy. It's time for the Terran player to be the swarm. Only just now is when the armor upgrades start up. He probably could have afforded them, either that or he ended up canceling them a little bit ago. I actually think Solar is pretty much toast. As much as I would like to continue seeing him play this, I don't really know what he can do. The thing is, he's gonna fizzle out over time. He's been pushed all the way back. Terran's economy is through the roof. And at this point, Zerg is never gonna trade cost efficiently. Maybe you can like mix it in Infestor or something, and you can hit like a fungal growth on this army, and then you can kind of cross the distance, but this is a unit composition that's been entirely unpopular. Obviously though, since all of the changes to the Cyclone, right, we have seen a lot of adjustments as well to the Zerg. Zerg has actually gotten, somebody made like a list of all of the changes over the last couple of years since the Balance Council took over on Reddit. And the amount of changes for Zerg are kind of insane, man. A lot of nerfs, primarily I would imagine due to Serral winning everything, but Clem, he makes it look easy. So with the Cyclone reversed to where it used to be back in the day, I am thinking of the Zerg adjustments that we have had since then that may make Battle Mech more viable. So to clarify, a couple years ago, we didn't really see a lot of Cyclone Hellion play at all. It was a very uncommon and a very unpopular unit composition in general, but maybe there have been some nerfs on the side of Zerg that make the unit play more viable. So there have been a couple adjustments. So the way that Zergs used to counter it is with, for example, a surround, right? So you would try to make a whole lot of drones, and you would try to basically just set up massive flanks, and you would try to get a rep around. That was option A. Option B would be, well, for example, fungal growth with infestors. Option C, it would be abductions with the Viper. A lot of those responses to Battle Mech have had quite a change, right? So fungal growth, for example, it had its damage reduced from 30 to 25. The vision range has been changed a bunch as well. And overall, it's just not as powerful as it once used to be. We also, of course, have had the change to the Viper, where the Viper can now not move for about half a second after it actually used the abduction ability. And all of that definitely does make Battle Mech a little bit more viable than it used to be back in the day. I mean, obviously, that previous game worked out brilliantly right there for Clem, because he was, dealing with that army from the Zerg player. I mean, maybe it would have been better for Solar if it was not a Banshee follow-up, but he must have picked up on the fact that it was continued Banshee production there for a while. Kind of felt like Solar was just running into a wall there that was never going to work out in the first place, but there is certainly a chance that with this complete reversal on the Cyclone, that we do have a more viable Battle Mech army now because of the additional nerfs that came in since then to the Zerg. Only time will tell. I wonder if Clem was just having a good time, though. I can imagine he also is just giving this sort of thing a try. And yeah, we'll have to see. If he plays Battle Mech again in this series, I guess that tells us enough. We probably won't be seeing anything like that, though, until the second factory would be produced. So for now, it will probably be triple command center into Hellion Banshee once more. And usually then after the third command center is done, that's when we see the additional unit producing structures. We'll have to keep an eye out on that production tab to see if it's going to be factories or barracks. I think both of them are going to be perfectly viable. Okay. A little bit of a dance here in the early game. Queen pops out though. Even though the Queen is 25 minerals more expensive, it does pop a couple seconds earlier because the hatchery is 25 minerals cheaper. Clem is walking the Queen. He wants to throw a grenade in front of the Queen to knock her back. You're not going back on creep today, Brenda. Okay, maybe you are. Never mind. Didn't want to overextend. He didn't know exactly where the second Queen and everything was located. Zerglings! Nope, not gonna happen. Alright. Oh, we do already have a second Rex. So this is actually not a mech play. This time around, it is not a 1-1-1 either. This is what seems to be a 2-1-1. So 2 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport eventually. It is a much faster Stimpeg. So the upgrade that Clem never went for in the previous game is going to be prioritized in this one. 3.5 minute lair here for Solar. I don't even know what you want to build. In my mind, right? So the Muta is technically more playable, but also worse. So here's the thing. The Thor's Javelin missiles now deal more splash damage. However, they have less range. Effectively, they function a little bit more like an Archon would. There's a little bit more of an overlap between the Archon now and the Thor with its splash damage missiles. I don't know if that makes Mutas more or less viable. It basically means that Mutas are going to be worse in straight-up engagements against Terran, which they're already pretty terrible at in the first place. But I guess you can maybe use them as an harassment tool a little bit better. Here's the lair done. Oh, that's not what we're doing at all. Okay, we're doing a 2-base Nidus network. This is for all intents and purposes an all-in right here for Solar. Solar not feeling confident to play the macro game against Clem whatsoever. We did, by the way, see Amygdala as well yesterday. This is for big brain players only. And Clem certainly is one of the big brain players. I mean, this is nice and all. I am mostly curious about this pesky little overlord in the back. Clem does not have vision of this little spot right over here. He does not quite see his entire main, but he is just now flying the 3rd command center on down to the low ground. And he sees the worm coming up. Can he still react to this, though? Zerglings, in the meantime, go towards the natural expansion. Lings also flood in, make it impossible for that depot to get lifted. There's all the queens. Remember Brenda from earlier? This is what she looks like now. Suddenly, the entire swarm has been transported across the map. Mules do land in the meantime, apparently. They did not quite get the memo of the engagement. We're just going to mine the closest by mineral field. So far, the losses have been minimized. But of course, this is a massive commitment right here from the Zerg player. As long as Clem survives with at least half of his workers intact, he should be okay. Spinecrawler's coming up. Keep in mind that the Spinecrawler changes got reverted with the most recent version of the balance patch. They used to deal more damage, now they don't. Zerglings are going to be flooding out. 14 SCVs go down, but honestly, as long as this is pushed back, Clem will be okay. Like, his 24 drones or 24 SCVs are going to be able to easily make up that difference together with mules as far as all that drone mining goes. And this was a very large commitment for Solar, who's now adding on additional drones again on his side of the map. Baneling nest on the back of this? Okay. Considering, though, that this was about the best case scenario for Solar, I don't like it. No. This is very much so Terran, just not being fully aware of the map yet. Clem could make a million different adjustments to prevent Nidus worms like that. For example, he could literally make a supply depot in a corner of the base, right? That wouldn't really change any of his build order up. He could just make one right over here and be fine. That was very much so a strategy from Solar that required luck. And this is the best case result. And the best case result is that we are kind of fine, but by no means in a great spot. If that Nidus worm would have gotten shut down right from the start, he would have been tremendously behind. So the risk-reward here does not quite line up. This does, of course, make the game very chaotic, though. Baneling Nest is getting its Baneling speed upgrade. Looks like we will be going into the good old siege tank production here eventually. Mining-wise, so this is when the SCVs were pulled away and they were fighting. Mining-wise, despite having a substantial lead in workers, Zerg cannot quite make up for that difference. Mules are good! And now suddenly it's really up to Clem here. I mean, unless we want to follow up our first all-in with another all-in? I think that's honestly the plan. Yeah, I don't think he's planning on going for any sort of Evo chamber upgrades. Nope. Bring out the roly-polies. This could work. Clem is currently going into 1-1 upgrades. He's building up the +1 like attacks as well for the siege tanks, but at this point he doesn't even have any of them yet. Guess it can help out too. Well, here we go. So far, that's actually not a terrible trait yet for Terran, but he does need to hold on against all of this. Jimmy decides to soak up a Baneling hit of his own too. SCVs will have to be spread around. We have a splitty right here as well on all of the Hellbats, apparently. This is not good for Solar. I don't like this. I mean, unless his follow-up is going to be great, 10 SCVs for that many Banes is not ideal. That being said, maybe he can make this work. Those Hellbats from earlier really getting a lot of value in. The Marine count is still relatively low, and you can see that Clem's Sim City over here at the front has completely disappeared, which makes all of this a little tricky. He decided to evacuate any of the leftover SCVs over at the third base and focus them in 2 locations instead. Solar is basically just turning his all-in into an all-in, into an all-in, into an all-in! That siege tank just killed 7 banelings with its very first shot. That was the money hit right there for the Terran. Siege tank will stay alive as well for now. Supply depot could be healed up immediately if he decided to use the drop-down ability. Although he doesn't seem to have energy right now on any of those command centers. Maybe the one in the main base had enough for it. Hero siege tank did ultimately fall there. 11 SCVs, 12 SCVs. I don't think this has been the cleanest defense from Clem, who clearly did not expect it. And much like the Nidus Worm from earlier, it's still not great for Solar. Solar goes for +1/+1 right now of his own. 10 minutes into the game, we decide to transition towards what seems to be a macro game. Clem decides to fire up the +2 attacks. I don't know if he's brave enough to go +2 armor as well. That is a rather expensive upgrade. Yeah, he does decide to get it. Now that he's once more in the driver's seat of the pacing of the game, apparently he's feeling confident to head across the map. Get all those upgrades going in the meantime at home. Barracks number 4 and 5 are coming up right now. Good target firing there. Yeah, and even though we've had some peaks and valleys, this is still not a bad situation here for Clem. I like the upgrades here for Clem, even though it's rather brave. Mostly because this is his real lead. Economically, he's not really in a massive disadvantage or advantage, like it's all relatively even. Obviously, this game has been very messy. But in all the ways that you can be ahead in a game of StarCraft 2, upgrades is one that is very difficult to recover from, and Clem is going to be able to push that advantage some more. Hydra then coming up right now. Maybe Solar thinking about going for that new Hive Tech upgrade. Additional marine production will be firing up. Generally speaking, we don't see any ghost play until the 4th base is up and coming, and we don't really, like, we have a 4th command center about halfway done, but we haven't really seen anything from the Zerg here that would warrant anything along those lines. Clem is still just playing Baneling whack-a-mole over here. Hits only the Banelings in the face and then runs away. Barracks 6, 7, and 8 coming up right now. Drilling claws coming up as well for the Widow Mines. We haven't seen a lot of them yet either. Clem is investing into a better future for all of us. Okay. A Hive will be on the horizon, though. I think what Solar is planning on going for here could be Ultras even, but I think it's probably going to be the good old Lurker. Not going to happen over here. Widow Mine is burrowed right next to that tank. Baneling roll-by over here is a potential. Clem will once more, much like that Nidus Worm from earlier, accidentally see it coming in. Hello? Okay. We do react. He's been busy out on the map, though. 5 SCVs end up going down, but that is not the end of the world. Solar now finally finding himself in a spot that is actually quite comfortable. As far as the work account goes, that is. He's finally got the work account up to a reasonable number. But this does still feel a little bit tricksy. There's the Hive. We don't have a Lurker Den yet. Keep in mind that the Ultralisk now pushes other units aside. After a decade and a half, the Ultra is finally going to be a little bit better in that department. I wonder if it's still counterable without... I don't know, like say you want to just double down on like Siege Tank play, for example. Can you just kill it with Marauders in addition to that? I don't know. I think you do need Ghosts. And this is actually after those repeated all-ins, turning into a nice little macro game. But Clem is trying to take control of everything here. There are some Widow Mines. Okay. An attempted split right there by the Zerg. Does get the second one too. And a very ambitious Siege Tank over here. Still enough mines available though to slow all of this down. Another attack up north. It's actually hitting the hatchery itself. Terran army is going to be able to escape away. And Solar, wow. Solar just doesn't want to play this out. Next up, we find ourselves on ley lines. That game looked close, but I don't overall really like the build order and the strategy right there from Solar. So, it looked good, but mostly because of two things. First off, he got a bit lucky. Clem didn't know what was happening. And then secondly, Clem's defense was not executed as perfectly as we have seen him execute in the past. So, ultimately the game ended up going into Terran's favor regardless. I honestly doubt that you can play a similar game like that again and then win that time around. It's very much so up to the Terran player to scout it and to do a better job reacting to it. So, if that is what we're going to be playing here, Solar, it reminds me a little bit of some of the Shin games we've seen. It almost feels desperate. Try to just get it over with as fast as possible, because otherwise it's not going to happen. Well, it's going to be a hatch gas pool here from the Zerg this time around. Nothing all too surprising though. And I'm assuming we'll see something looking relatively similar again as well from Clem. What do you guys think is nicer? The old Cyclone or the newer Cyclone? Or the new old Cyclone? Or the old new Cyclone? Whatever you want to call it. I have a hard time deciding which version of the Cyclone is my favorite. I think all of them are kind of... eh. The main change, though, that is going to be impactful as far as the Cyclone goes, is for Terran versus Protoss. The non-tech lab required version of the Cyclone really does shut down a lot of the Stargate into adept build orders from Protoss. Terrans making a bunch of Marines and a Cyclone or two really make that extremely hard, because Adepts just don't have a good time against Cyclones whatsoever. And now that Terran will have to commit it to at least a tech lab, it's going to slow all of that down quite a bit too. I think I like this version of the Cyclone, like the one that is in this updated version of the PTR, better than the one that we have in the current live version of the game, even though it's the old version, mostly because it helps out Terran versus Protoss better. And maybe it will make Battle Mech a little bit more viable too. Honestly, the Cyclone has always been a bit of an awkward unit. There's a few units in the game that always have had like a little bit of an awkward time. That never really found their role in any of the matchups so much. And the Cyclone is one of them. I love this little dance that they keep doing, man. Clem just wants to dance. Solar is like, bro, get off my lawn. Like, just get out of here. Then again, Solar lives in Seoul, right? So, I don't think anybody has a lawn in Seoul. It's a big city, but also a lot of people. Alrighty, so, we have a relatively late third command center here. So this is a straight 1-1-1 right now from Clem. No tech lab yet, so we have to keep an eye out on what that starport is going to do. Are we going to build an armory as well? Are we going to go medevacs? Where exactly are we going to take this? So far, it seems like there's a lot of variety in the early game here for Clem. And usually, yep, there's the armory. This is going to allow him to morph in those Hellions into Hellbats. Normally, that means Terrans are feeling good. There has been a time period where Clem was playing the same build over and over and over again, and he looked very dominant with that. But I feel like Clem is cruising along when he's playing a lot of varieties. Ultimately, it's all relatively similar, like all the roads do lead towards a similar mid-game, but the first few structures getting flipped around, and second barracks rather than a starport in the previous game. Now we have a delayed third command center. We'll be building it up after this, but we're gonna do some Hellbat pressure first. Sometimes it can accidentally win you the game, and keep in mind, of course, that the Queen is now more expensive, so maybe that ultimately also makes Hellbat attacks a little bit better. With the Spinecrawler not being buffed, I don't see any Zergs making that. This is going to be something, though, that Solar scouts right now. He sees the timing of this, but the Terran army is already knocking on his front door. How many Queens are we on? 6. Normally, we'd have 7. That 7th Queen is trailing behind a little bit. Queens are the main tool for defense here. Good control so far, though, by the South Korean Zerg player. Nice micro there as well on that medevac, bringing it back, forcing the Queens to stutter step forward ever so slightly, and that means they're within range of the rest of those Marines and those Hellbats. Ultimately, the medevac does fall into the glowing ball of lava there, but there's a good bit of damage dealt here already by Clem. Not so much as far as eco goes, although that may very well be coming next, but mostly as far as those queen losses go, man. Like, these queen losses are gonna hurt. Liberator, just to rub some salt in the wound as well over at the 4th base. Or, sorry, the 3rd base. Dude, I have just seen Zerg get pummeled so far in this new version of the balance patch. Admittedly, I haven't seen a ton of games, but my god, man. Stop hitting him, Clem. He's already dead. No, he's not dead. But he's certainly bruised. Okay. The main hurt right there for Solar is those 7 queens. Those 7 queens, whew, that is gonna slow down anything Zerg wants to do right now. Because first he will have to remake queens for injects. And then if he wants to, I mean, it's gonna cut into his attack. So he's not doing it. If he wants to, he would have to, yeah, build up, I guess, additional queens for creep spread then a little bit later. Liberator can tank 3 of those hits from the corrosive biles. There's another one coming in. Clem bullies that one away. It's barely in the nick of time. This counterattack from the Zerg, though, is looking pretty promising. Siege tank rolls down. That is going to make life better, and that's exactly what Clem is trying to buy time for. This is looking mighty good as well for TERRAN right now. How do you break this? The longer you wait here as Solar, the more siege tanks and liberators there's going to be, the more targets that need to be biled down. Okay, here we go. He pulls the trigger. This is apparently where we want to go. SCVs step away as soon as those biles land. It takes about 7 corrosive biles to one-shot a bunker. Looks like we are eventually gonna get the bunker as well as the liberator at the same time. But for 8 SCV losses, well, that's a trait that Clem will take any day of the week. He's got a 3rd command center in the meantime on the back of this. Zerg has not added any drones into the mix ever since the Hellbat attack. 1-1 upgrades are on the horizon here as well for the TERRAN. Stimpack is done. Combat Shields is gonna finish up within about a minute. Overlord will scout exactly what's going on, and I think what Solar is scouting is death. Yeah, isn't that nice? He's tremendously behind right now. And even though he can cross his fingers and try to make a whole lot of drones here, it would require quite a significant error here from Clem to not bring this one home. Now, it happens. It happens. But Clem is an absolute monster when it comes to playing at the highest level. He doesn't really lose any games in general right now against Zerg. Obviously even demolishing Serral at the most recent EWC. Just destroying him, honestly. Like, it's insane. I've never seen anybody beat Serral that hard. I don't think Clem really loses against any Zerg. And this is one of those situations right now where Clem is significantly ahead. This is not even a remotely even game. This is him being significantly ahead. Look at this. 2-2 is further along than 1-1. Solar just started up 1-1. Solar just arrived at hatchery, or sorry, at lair tech. So he's going roach speed together with baneling speed. He will, I guess, go Ravager, Ling Bane, and that's the plan. It's a decent unit comp. It can certainly work out if the game goes the distance. But at this point, Solar's very best game plan is to sit back and wait. Hope that the TERRAN player makes a tremendous mistake and then capitalize on it. So he's basically saying, I'm making a 4th base, but I'm not really making workers for it. I'm just gonna maximize my army production and hope that you decide to roll a little bit too deep. Well, his heart is gonna sink when he sees the 4th command center. That 4th command center is a very clear indicator that Clem is not here to really do an all-in. He's not playing like a 3-base 8-rex type of push. He is, yeah, calmly extending his lead. That 4th command center is a massive indicator that he is happily playing the macro game here once more. And that means that Solar needs to make drones. He needs to get up to about 85 workers here ASAP. Because otherwise he just, okay, yeah, he can't compete. So at this point, he knows that everything is falling apart, and it's Clem who very easily, it seems, obtains the victory 3-0 over Solar.